even in the last few years, drone technology is just rapidly expanding. Like when we first started buying Phantom 4 RTKs, so that would have been 2018, I think we bought some of our first ones. The price for them now, we're paying almost half that for a drone that's way better. Like it's just rapidly expanding. So you're going to have better autonomy. Like we've got a dock system on one of our projects. So I don't know if you've seen some of those where the drone's inside the box opens up, the drone takes off, does its thing, come back, land in the box sort of thing. At the moment, that's still, to comply with CASA, you've still got to, depending on which workflow you're going through, you still got to have visual line of sight. But yeah, I think there's going to be wider adoption of that sort of extended visual line of sight or beyond visual line of sight. So you'll have less need for the remote pilot to necessarily be on site, and you can have a remote pilot operating multiple sites. And that comes down to that. So another acronym is UTM, which is unmanned traffic management. So they're working in that space as well to integrate that a little bit more. So you'll have drones covering larger, more complex sites. So the ones we've got issues with at the moment are the linear sites where, you know, you're doing 12 kilometers of highway. It's an issue for, you can't have a drone in a box there because obviously you don't have visual line of sight along 12 kilometers. You can roughly see a drone, depending on the size of it, comfortably to 800 meters each way. So you're only doing 1.6 kilometers at a time, and then you're having to move to another spot, send it up, go again, send it up, go again. So if you could have longer visual line of sight or extended visual line of sight on those linear ones, you're going to have a lot better coverage. And then even things like total stations and GNSS rovers are rapidly developing as well, where you used to buy a GNSS supervisor kit for like 30 grand. You can get an awesome RTK GNSS receiver now for like 5 grand. So it's, you know, just the price and technology is so rapidly expanding. It's going to change a lot of things, I think.
Hi, Scott. Welcome to the Digital Construction Podcast. How are you today?
Yeah, super, mate.
So in this episode, we speak with Scott Major, Digital Engineering Practice Lead and Chief Remote Pilot at Seymour Whyte. Scott previously also worked for Arup, WSP, AECOM, but he has also worked as a combat engineer for the Australian Army. How exciting, huh? Today, we explore how unmanned aerial vehicles, commonly known as drones, digital surveys and reality capture are revolutionizing the way construction projects are designed and delivered. But before we start, Scott, I have an icebreaker for you. What's the best piece of advice you've ever received in your career?
I'd probably say something I got sort of told early on. I had a mentor when I was at starting out at Mornsell, which is now AECOM, and he said to me, never stop learning. So he, in his way of saying it, he was saying move about the different business sort of areas, so move into enviro, civil structures and that sort of thing. But I took it in a more sort of literal sense, and it's for me a way of sort of working and living. You know, every project, every challenge, every conversation is an opportunity to learn something new. So not just collecting qualifications, even though that's something that often happens as a result. It's about, you know, being adaptive, integrating new tools, staying aware of regulatory changes, new methodologies. So deepening your expertise and applying processes, but understanding the why that's behind them. So for me, it's, you know, cross-pollinating skills, bringing insights from UAV operations into asset governance, applying DE practices to streamline compliance. It's sort of, something that I, in my life, not just in my professional career, but it's something that I tend to live by, basically.
Yeah, I'm sure that this advice has helped in your career. But speaking about career, can you start telling us a bit about your career journey and what led you to work in the construction space? You also have this career in the army, so it's very interesting. So what's your story?
Yeah, so I actually, when I was in high school, I was actually really good in we had a subject called graphics, which was basically technical drawing and using CAD and things like that. And so I started using AutoCAD back in, I don't know, it would have been like early 1999 or something, like installing AutoCAD off floppy drives onto the computer sort of thing. And so by the time I finished high school, we actually had some people from Mornsell contact the school and said, "Oh, have you got anyone that'd be interested in being a drafter?" I said, "Yeah, well, I'd be pretty keen on that." I had an interview with them, and I was actually planning to go to uni to do environmental science and deferred that and went and started out at Mornsell in 2004 and liked it so much that I kept going with them. Studied at TAFE at nights at the time as well. So I'd be at work all day and then at TAFE at night. Some of the good projects I had there were like Intercity Bypass, Westlink M7, Sunshine Motorway, Marucci Boulevard, Calandra, MMTC. But probably the biggest one was the Clem 7 down in Brisbane. And then that led, because that was a JV, I met a lot of people from Parsons Brinckerhoff or WSP at the time as well. So when they won that JV for Airport Link with Arup, I went over and joined Parsons Brinckerhoff and worked on Airport Link until that one finished up. And then I actually moved over to Arup at the end of that as well. So JVs during that time were something that I'd sort of meet the new partner and move on to the next company at the time. But it's like that continual journey of learning and changing. And whilst I was at Arup, we worked on the transport network reconstruction program. I was doing more study in surveying and spatial science at the time as well. And then I was the drawing delivery manager for CR2SM, which is the Calandra Road to Sunshine Motorway project. After that was sort of finishing up in the design phase, I was looking for a new change, and Seymour Whyte was the construction company in a JV with Fulton Hogan for CR2SM. So I actually reached out to some of the guys there that I'd worked with on the tender and the design and said, hey, look, I'm looking at finishing up here at Arup. You got anything that you can sort of use my skill for? And they said, yeah, fantastic, come out to site and we'll get you going as a DE person out here. And I was like, brilliant. So it was probably the best thing I ever did was move into construction. I think construction sort of suits me and my more outdoorsy personality a little bit better. Like being on construction sites rather than being in the city is more my sort of realm, I think. And that survey sort of side is something that I should have got into a bit sooner, but you know, life pushes you in certain directions and you go the way with it. So, but at Seymour Whyte, I've worked on that CR2SM project, which was awesome. Like other projects like the Marucci de Mons, the Smart Motorways, Palmy-Sachugan, Mudgebar to Varsity Lakes. And also after so I forgot to mention when I was at Arup, I went and did my remote pilot license, which was in 2015. And then when I was at Seymour Whyte, the survey manager found out I actually had that, and he was like, oh, well, we should be flying this site ourselves because we were actually getting a subby to do it. And it led to us getting our REOC and certification, and he was the chief pilot at the time. And I was one of the pilots, and we trained up a few other guys as well. And so we started flying all the sites ourselves. And then now at Seymour Whyte, every site has at least one pilot on it, basically. And my old manager, Tom, retired 2 years ago. And so I took over that chief remote pilot role. And now I'm out at Beerbrum to Nambour as a DE manager. And as another sort of learning thing, I did a Cert 3 in IT recently, just in cybersecurity, because TAFE was offering free study, so I thought, why not take advantage of that? So I did that one, and then it sort of reinvigorated my study again. So I've gone back and I'm now studying a Bachelor of Science in Geospatial Science as well. So it's just, I don't know, it's just, I get really interested in learning new things, and it's sort of, like that lifelong journey, I guess.
Yeah, you're actually always learning, and that's very interesting. And I always find interesting to see how different people land into this digital engineering space from different and completely different angles. You alluded on this on your role of chief remote pilot, but can you tell us what it means? Because I'm not sure that everybody is familiar with this role.
Yeah, definitely. Like, it's a funny one as well, because often out on site, we'll go around and we're flying different things, and you'll have the guys in the grader or the sideys looking at you going, oh, you must have the life just flying drones all day, but they don't realize how much sort of regulatory compliance and JSA and all the planning that goes on in the back end to actually get out there and fly the drone. The flying of the drone is the small part to it. So the chief remote pilot isn't just about the flying the drones. It's especially in construction center, it's as chief remote pilot under our REOC, which is the remote operator certificate. I'm essentially responsible for every aspect of our UAV operations. So regulatory compliance to ensuring we got the data that the client essentially needs, or that we need, that delivers real value for the project. So that means you have to, in order to get the REOC, you have to have the remote pilot license, stay across all your regulatory changes, maintain operational documentation, ensure every pilot in the team is current, competent, authorized. So day to day, it's sort of a mix of leadership, risk management, technical integration, planning and approving missions, assessing hazards, putting mitigations in place, whether it's a standard site survey or complex operation in UAV denied areas. We'll train and mentor the pilots to conduct the proficiency checks and select the right platforms for the job. I think one of the biggest challenges and rewards is balancing that sort of flight safety with the project goals. Safety always comes first. That's one of our main things. It's the key is getting UAV operations into the project planning cycle, so flights essentially aren't an afterthought. They're integrated into the delivery strategy.
Yeah, good point. What type of, like, I know many people see drones as toys, because you can find them in shopping centers. You can go to JBI, Harvey Norman, and buy the drone. And but when you do this commercially on real projects, it's a bit different. So, what kind of training and certification is required to operate drones commercially in Australia?
Yeah, so if you want to operate commercially, CASA, so the Civil Aviation Safety Authority, sets all the rules. And it depends on the size of the drone you've got and the type of your work you're doing. So for smaller drones, low risk jobs, you can get an RPA operator accreditation, which is an online thing through CASA. It's free and quick and easy to do, and it's valid for 3 years. But once you're flying anything over the 2 kilo mark and you want a little bit more operational flexibility, you need to get that remote pilot license. And then that's when you're doing the theory and practical assessment with a CASA certified training provider. We use a company called AviAssist. And funnily enough, that's the same company that I did my training through back in 2015. So a guy that we had recently trained is still using them. They're probably one of the better ones in the industry. If you're running the UAV program for business like we do, you also need to have a remote operator certificate, also called, REOC, because everyone loves a good acronym. That's the approval that sort of lets you employ other pilots, operate in more complex environments, and apply for special permissions. So over or near people, or flying in areas like on our Palmy-Statugan project, we're within proximity of the airport down there, so we have to get a area exemption to fly there. So it means every time we fly, we have to log a NOTAMs. We have to check with the tower that we're allowed to fly. We get given certain hours we're allowed to fly. We are only allowed a certain ceiling that we're allowed to fly to. We have to notify the tower when we start. We have to notify the tower when we finish. So it's, once you've got that REOC, you can apply for all those extra accreditations basically and area approvals. So we got our over or near people recently, and the next one we're looking at is the EV loss as well.
Yeah, it's a lot more complex than people would probably think.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot more in the back end.
Yeah, definitely. Very interesting. And I want to talk about the role of drones in construction, and we're probably seeing in the last few years evolving from like novelty to a real necessity on sites. But from your point of view, how has the role of drones in construction changed over the last few years?
Yeah, I agree. They've definitely changed from being novelty to novelty tool for aerial photos to becoming basically an integral part of the construction life cycle. Early on, it was largely capturing visual records, but today they're embedded in our workflows. So feeding live data to models, dashboards, review platforms, and support, real-time decision makings like we were testing and we've used before. Actually, literally this morning, I approved a flight for them down on a project in our Canberra region to fly the drones with someone supervising on another machine to check bird nests before clearing trees. Like, it's just everything that you wouldn't think of that use typically. And we've used thermal drones as well on other projects for clearing operations as well, just to check. It's just an evolving beast. But, we've seen that expansion from volumetric stockpile analysis and project sort of progress verification to thermal inspections, remote hazard assessments. It's driven by advances in the sensor technology, improved flight endurance, and better integration with those geospatial platforms. But also, I think the regulatory sort of maturities helped a lot as well. So the CASA frameworks and faster approvals for things like over or near people and extended visual line of sight or EV loss, allow us to operate more efficiently while still maintaining that compliance with their needs. But yeah, they've moved from being a supplementary service to a strategic capability. And that's one that then improves safety, efficiency, data quality while enabling innovation.
Yeah, good point. And you listed a few applications, but what is probably the most common you see at the moment?
Um, there's probably about 5 key areas. One of our biggest ones is basically aerial surveying and mapping. High resolution cameras or LiDAR to capture site data way faster and with a lot more density than traditional survey methods. The second one is progress monitoring. Just feeding imagery and measurements into GIS and DE platforms. Inspections is another one we use as well. So high risk, hard to reach areas. So whether that's a high embankment or a rock face or even undersides of bridges and things like that. Volumetric analysis, stockpile measurements, and quality assurance is a big one as well. Overlaying as-built data versus design models. They all basically get embedded into our workflows. And probably the last one, which is quite a big one as well, we found is insurance. So drones are very helpful, like in the terms of like a flood event or intense rainfall event. If you know it's coming in, you can quickly get the drone out, take some photos around the site, and then that happens, and then you can send it back out again and capture those images. And when you're looking at insurance claims, having those images like pictured tells 1,000 words. It's extremely valuable. Yeah.
It's great. And if you can think about one project where the application of drone really made a major difference, what would that be?
Probably there was one we had where we had a newly constructed sort of embankment area, and there was a suspected sort of instability in that embankment. So normally we'd send survey teams out, so you have to organise traffic control or organise teams to get out there, and you're exposing personnel to hazards. Instead, we sent UAV out with photogrammetry. We captured the model in a minimal amount of time, processed it into a 3D terrain model, compared it to the baseline surveys, and it revealed it was pretty localized and not as bad as we initially thought. But because we had that data, like same day, the engineering team was able to design the remediation plan and have it underway rather than having a 2-week wait to basically organize the team to get out and have that assessed and then compare it. And so it just underscores how you're keeping people out of harm's way, getting the data faster, and just enhancing safety and commercial value in high pressure situations.
Yeah, that's a very valid point. And I think when people think about drones, think about drones and safety, there are probably like two aspects that are quite different. So one is the safety related to the fact that the actual drone can fall on your head or fall onto things and create the damage. So that's an aspect of safety. But there is also the other aspect of safety, which is the one related to improving safety because you're not actually sending a human being in a location where it could be dangerous to send people to. But from your point of view, how do you see drones enhance site safety on construction site and reduce potentially the risk of hazardous conditions?
I think the biggest thing is basically they allow us to see more, see sooner, and see it without putting people in harm's way. So there's always a phrase that people use with UAVs, which is dull, dirty, or dangerous. So it's, boring, repetitive tasks. If it's an environment that's dirty and, shouldn't be in there, or it's a dangerous area to be in, that's when it's a good time to look at employing a robot or a UAV. So, sending personnel into high risk areas like unstable structures, deep excavations, or near active plant, it's a good opportunity to look at using a UAV. With the remote hazard risk assessment, we can identify the issues a lot quicker and sort of work out what we need to remediate that or remove the risk at all.
That's good. And do you find that more and more clients or project managers are now expecting drone data as a part of the delivery of a project?
Yeah, definitely. That's what I was saying before, is basically we pretty much price into the tenders and projects now that there will be a drone on every site, and almost every single one of our sites, unless it's an area where we can't physically fly, like we're next door to the airport, will have a drone on every site. So, and all of the clients like Transport for New South Wales, TMR, MRPV, like anyone, they all expect to get that imagery as well. So industry wide, the uptake is just rapidly accelerating. It's massive.
And think about this reality capture. I sometimes think people talk about reality capture. It could be seen as one of these buzzwords. But what's your approach to capturing and processing reality data from drones? Because you have a drone, it's flying, it's capturing data, but then you always need to do the after work when you have to process the data. So how do you think about that?
I'd normally start from the back and work out what the end use is first, and then try to define the process to get to that point. So we'll follow a structured workflow with the pre-flight assessments, the airspace and site hazard checks, and mission planning in line with CASA, and if we need to use over and near people. But then we select the right UAV and sensor, whether it's a high definition RGB photo sensor or a LiDAR sensor for dense vegetation, or a thermal if we're doing inspections. And then we're typically, like, the majority of our flights are all semi-automated, so we will take off the drone and check flight systems and everything first as part of our quality process and safety assessment. But then all of the flight plans are actually automated, so it flies a set route backwards and forwards each time, and then that's repeatable as well. And the clients like to see that as well. Like, we often have to show TMR and TFNSW where the drone is actually flying, so that we can prove our compliance with CASA's requirements and their requirements. But it's then, once we've got the data, we process it through our photogrammetry or LiDAR software. Sorry, that one's throwing me a bit. We generate the orthomosaics, 3D meshes, point clouds, whatever we sort of need, and then we can integrate it into our BIM platforms, modeling platforms, review platforms, whatever we're using it for.
Yeah, very interesting. I've been working in the past on photogrammetry. It's very interesting how this software can stitch photos together and create this mesh of a 3D element that's not really a 3D. It's just like photos stitched together. It's very interesting. And also the LiDAR produces this 3D model, which is just dots everywhere.
Yeah.
It's very
The
cool.
LiDAR stuff's amazing, but the issue we've got a lot of the time is data storage, or like cloud storage, or because just the volume and the size of the data is just immense, and then often you have to dumb the data down to use it again anyway. So it's a bit of a balancing act, really.
Yeah, this is also very interesting. Very interesting talk about the data, and there is always a problem related to different software vendors and data compatibility between different platforms, and also the ability of keeping the data available long term. So how do you think that the industry is doing enough to make this data accessible and usable long term?
They're making progress, but I don't think it's there yet. I think it's like I said, it's massively rich, big data sets. Orthomosaics, point clouds, 3D meshes. They're often treated as short-term project artifacts rather than long-term digital assets. So, and the challenge just isn't storage; it's accessibility, interoperability, and governance of those as well. Like, so many data sets are just locked in little proprietary formats or silos, or different digital platforms, and it just limits their value to the actual end user. So I think, moving forwards, if we had some sort of open standard metadata tagging integration with asset information models, I don't know, it makes it a lot more usable, like stronger alignment between workflows and information management frameworks like ISO 19650, controlling that data structure and linking it to a common data environment. That the technology is there, but the cultural and contractual frameworks essentially need to catch up. Yeah.
And speaking about BIM and the broader BIM workflows, do you find that it's easy or difficult to integrate the data that come from drones into the broader BIM workflows?
No, we use a couple of different tools to sort of get it in. Once we've got the data processed, we use different APIs to sort of link between a lot of the data platforms. So rather than, previously we used to have to get the SD card out of the drone, copy the data on the computer, upload it to our processing platform, and then once it's processed, we download that and use it in the different things. Now, essentially, the drone is connected to the internet as well, so you don't have to take this SD card out. It uploads it and it processes it. In some platforms, it'll process it directly without you even needing to move data around at all. And then once it's there, we've got that linked through to our other review platforms, so it'll actually automatically upload straight away. As soon as a flight's done, within 24 hours or typically less, the data can be reviewed. Like if we fly in the morning, normally you can see the data on your platform ready to go in the afternoon, depending on the job size.
Yeah, that's great. And with every new technology or relatively new technology, there are often there is a bit resistance and a little bit of barriers to digital adoption. Do you find yourself struggling in encouraging construction teams to adopt these digital technologies?
Yeah, definitely. I think it's getting a lot better. I found like in the last couple of years, it's definitely started to progress a lot faster. I think from a construction point of view, if you're looking at DE specifically, there's this requirement for this model at the end of the project, and a construction company was trying to understand why we needed to hand that over to the client, and if they were actually using it is always a big question mark. So, but anyway, I think we've gotten past that now, and it comes down to cost, skills gaps, and I don't know, yeah, just the end user really. So cost is still a big one, like having to pay for this model at the end of the day that you're not sure if it's actually getting used or not is often a hard pill to swallow. But if you could see a little bit of transparency into the way that the end client's using it, not only would you understand how they're using it and be able to tailor the way you build that model, but you'd get a little bit more, I don't know, openness into the fact that it is actually getting used rather than just sitting on a shelf somewhere and never getting touched again. Just give you a little bit more, I don't know, interest in actually developing it, I guess. But yeah, the skills gap is a big one, but I think is getting a lot better these days as well. A lot more people are aware of what DE or BIM is and the tools that go with it, and a lot more people have sort of adapted to that as well. But anytime you move from one platform to another, there's always that change management process too. So if someone's been using Revisto and then you take that off them and you give them, I don't know, a Navisworks, or you give them a Bentley iTwin or something like that, because there are so many different platforms around as well, it can be sometimes hard with changing teams and joint venture partners and that. So it's a bit of a juggling act, really.
And one of the topics we often touch in this podcast is training for people that actually work in your teams, and they need to upskill to be able to operate drones. And from your point of view, how do you train staff in drone and data workflows?
So with the drones, essentially, we start with the CASA operator training essentially first, because they need to go and get their CASA operator's license and remote pilot license so that they understand, airspace rules, safe protocols. Then we look into our flight planning processes. So we use a program called Fly Freely for our operational compliance. So that's where we generate all of our flight programs, JSAs, everything like that. And that's where it comes to me to then review it before the pilot can fly on site. And we also have regular competency assessments with the pilots that we have as well. So we'll do a theory assessment and a practical assessment where I'll go out and actually assess each of them as well. And then if we have a change in our REOC or our approvals, like overall near people, we retrain all the pilots in that as well. And then if we have an incident and we can have some lessons learned from that, we'll all go through that training together and redo anything we need with that one as well.
That's good. And when we started this episode, I've asked you what's the best piece of advice you have ever received. But now I want to flip this question and ask you, what advice would you give to somebody starting out in the drone-related workspace?
I'd say build a foundation in sort of a few different areas. So technical skills, regulatory knowledge, and industry context. So technical side, get comfortable with both hardware and data workflows, understand the sensors, photogrammetry, LiDAR, BIM integration, and then regulatory side, if you're looking at your obligations from CASA, so airspace, safety. If it's DE, you're looking at all your 19650 sort of standards. But it's also industry awareness. So digital tools are only as good as the problems they solve. So get out on site, kick the dirt, talk to the guys out there, because I often, in the DE space as well, there was something I did on CR2SM where we got the actual field surveyors and the site supervisors to actually come in for our new work area meetings. So before we'd actually move into a work area, we'd get everyone that was going to be working in that area to come in. We'd get the model open on the screen, we'd go through it all, and we'd work out how it was going to be built. So it's understanding how things get built sometimes. If you're a designer, that makes you a better designer, because often we find designers might put electrical and comms in a certain way, but we're not going to put it in that way on site. So just little things and how curbs are put together. So getting out there and actually kicking the dirt is often a good way to understand how things get built.
Yeah, that's good. And now I understand why you like this role where you say I spend lots of time outside outdoor.
Yeah, yeah.
And yeah,
But
I would
it's
like
funny
to.
because
Yeah,
before
yeah.
I sort of got into construction, I'd spent so long in design, and there was still things that I would put on a drawing or I would model, but then I wouldn't understand how they were actually building it. So it was really eye-opening to go out on site. And I even spoke to my construction manager at the time and said, look, I just want to go out and move around between some of these sites and see how stuff gets built, just so it makes you a better rounded individual, because you understand that the way you're modeling it, and you're looking at things from a completely different way as well. Like often I'd go into these meetings and we'd have an issue and people were giving their solutions, and I'd be like, well, what about we just do this? And they'd be like, oh, we didn't consider it that way. But it's because everyone comes from a different background, everyone's going to cut it differently. So yeah.
Yeah, very good point. And thinking about the futures of drones and digital engineering, I know it's hard to predict the future, but where do you see the drone technology going in the next, I don't know, 3 to 5 years in the construction industry, or even longer if you know?
Yeah, so I mean, even in the last few years, drone technology is just rapidly expanding. Like when we first started buying Phantom 4 RTKs, so that would have been 2018, I think we bought some of our first ones. The price for them now, we're paying almost half that for a drone that's way better. Like it's just rapidly expanding. So you're going to have better autonomy. Like we've got a dock system on one of our projects. So I don't know if you've seen some of those where the drone's inside the box opens up, the drone takes off, does its thing, come back, land in the box sort of thing. At the moment, that's still, to comply with CASA, you've still got to, depending on which workflow you're going through, you still got to have visual line of sight. But yeah, I think there's going to be wider adoption of that sort of extended visual line of sight or beyond visual line of sight. So you'll have less need for the remote pilot to necessarily be on site, and you can have a remote pilot operating multiple sites. And that comes down to that. So another acronym is UTM, which is unmanned traffic management. So they're working in that space as well to integrate that a little bit more. So you'll have drones covering larger, more complex sites. So the ones we've got issues with at the moment are the linear sites where you're doing 12 kilometers of highway. It's an issue for, you can't have a drone in a box there because obviously you don't have visual line of sight along 12 kilometers. You can roughly see a drone, depending on the size of it, comfortably to 800 meters each way. So you're only doing 1.6 kilometers at a time, and then having to move to another spot, send it up, go again, send it up, go again. So if you could have longer visual line of sight or extended visual line of sight on those linear ones, you're going to have a lot better coverage. And then even things like total stations and GNSS rovers are rapidly developing as well, where you used to buy a GNSS supervisor kit for like 30 grand. You can get an awesome RTK GNSS receiver now for like 5 grand. So it's, just the price and technology is so rapidly expanding. It's going to change a lot of things, I think.
Exciting time. And we talked about data and the role of data for drones, but would like to think about asset management. And do you see the drones data is playing a big role in long-term asset management?
Yeah, definitely. It's those sort of month-to-month flights and more regulatory, more I don't know, frequent flights depending on the asset, but it's giving you that verifiable high resolution digital record of an asset's condition over time. It's over its entire life cycle, really. Instead of relying on periodic manual inspections, you've got a timestamped georeference data set from UAVs, so you can use that. It's giving you predictive maintenance by analyzing trends in the wear, settlement, corrosion, vegetation encroachment. They can intervene before issues escalate, and it's going to make that asset last a lot longer, reducing whole of life costs. Yeah, it's definitely, and well, I don't want to say the word because everyone seems to bash it about lately, but AI, is, the AI analytics. As soon as you start feeding drone data in from a flight that you're doing over and over again, once it learns what it's looking for, it's going to tell you the maintenance you need as well. So it's going to move from being reactive to proactive, with continuous improvement over time as that AI learns what it's looking for.
Yeah, and you mentioned AI, so we're close to the end of the episode, but I have one more question for you, which is if there are any tools or trends that you are keeping a close eye on.
One that I've been watching for a while, and that it's still not at a point where I've picked a solution that's in a good price point, is actually ground-based capture. So there's a lot of tools out there for LiDAR and also for ground-based photogrammetry, but still not giving me the data that I want essentially good enough at this time. So when we do have sites that are UAV denied environments, we need to capture the data. And there's a few out there, but you're still looking at like mobile LiDAR units that are pretty exy to get into. But sensor technology is constantly evolving, and LiDAR units and that are going to get cheaper over time. And like I said, combined with that AI analytics, it's something that I'm definitely watching is the AI and linking those data sets around and having it actually identify issues, which it's already doing at the moment. We've got guys who will drive along, our traffic managers will drive along a section of freeway and have just a GoPro going or something like that, feed it in through the AI, and I won't mention what he's actually using, but it actually picks up any potential hazards or incidents along that traffic alignment. So it'll tell him if he needs to fix anything, or if signs are out of place, or if a barrier looks like it's not in the right spot or anything like that. So that stuff's constantly sort of evolving as well. But the one for me as well is also CASA's extended visual line of sight and beyond visual line of sight, and how that evolves over time as well as they become more comfortable with how people are operating drones in those environments. And if we can, it's essentially proving that the technology works and it is safe, and so that they can release the reins a little bit to allow people to use those. So yeah, that's something that I'm keeping an eye on, definitely.
Thank you. This is really exciting stuff. We are at the end of the episode. If people want to reach out to you, where can they find you?
LinkedIn's probably the easiest one to give us a yell. Happy to share insights, discuss UAVs, DE, collaboration opportunities, anything. Yeah.
Scott, thank you for sharing your insight with us today. It's clear that drones aren't just a nice to have in construction, and they are becoming critical tools for the delivery of modern projects. We've covered a lot of ground and probably even air today. It was a great episode. Thank you, Scott. Have a great day.
Awesome. Thanks, mate. See ya.